Hey everyone, it's Mike with It's Pittsfield Tonight. It is Tuesday, July 29th, and I'm going to jump right into it. So this video is going to be a continuation of a topic that we've been talking about for quite some time now, and we're going to be talking about it for quite some time, I think. And that is Mayor Marchetti's, Pittsfield Mayor Peter Marchetti's camping ban ordinance proposal. And last night at 6 p.m. at City Hall in the council chambers was the Pittsfield City Council Ordinance and Rules Committee meeting. And this went back to Ordinance and Rules, and it was voted on last night whether it would be sent to the City Council for final approval or not. And it did pass. It passed 3-2 in favor of Mayor Marchetti's camping ban ordinance. And those in favor were City Council President Pete White, at-large Councilor Kathy Amuso, and Ward 7 Councilor Rhonda Sear. So, and those against were Ward 5 Councilor Patrick Cavey and Ward 6 Councilor Dina Lampiazzi. I did not see any candidates running for the council this year in attendance, other than a few of the incumbents, I think, were there. Kenny Warren was there. I might have missed, Ward 1 Councilor was there. And at-large candidate and former at-large councilor Karen Kalinowski was in attendance. I did not see any other candidates, which surprised me, as big of a topic as this is. So here's what I'm going to say, because I did post on It's Pittsfield Tonight yesterday, a post directly under this one, asking people to go. Whether you're for it or against it, go. This is an important meeting. And I did go back and forth with a few people on there over some things, and I'll maybe talk about that at another time. Not specific to them, but just my attitude with some of that. But I posted on there the Supreme Court ruling, which took place in June 2024 in Grants. It was a case, Johnson versus Grants Pass. And it's Grants Pass is a town in Oregon, or a small city, about the same size as Pittsfield. I think Grants Pass actual population is right around 39,000, 40,000, something like that. It passed the Supreme Court that they could put a camping ban on public spaces in effect, even if there was not adequate shelter or services to accommodate these people. And it passed the Supreme Court. It was a 6-3 ruling. I was not defending it or against it. I just put the facts out there that due to that ruling in June of last year, the Supreme Court legalized doing this. It's legal. Now, what Grants Pass did is a disaster in this context. Because some people said, well, they've reversed it. They have not reversed it. They have not reversed that. What they did as a community is they put up 4 campsites with chain link fence around them and porta potties in there. And they said, well, you can camp in here. And they're right near their city hall. Where the state lawsuits came in is because state law, like in many states, but state law in that state, in Oregon, is there's people with disabilities, you have to be compliant. There's codes that they have to be compliant to. By just putting porta potties in there, are those handicap accessible? There was all sorts of different components to that triggered some lawsuits. And their police department is overwhelmed right now with dealing with all these different things and crimes and problems happening within these campsites. So where they completely screwed up is they put in a camping ban and fought so hard and got so focused on that camping ban, they got sidetracked from the fact that they did not have the facilities to accommodate people who needed help. And I don't know if they just thought they were just going to leave or kick them out of the community, but it didn't work out that way. So they're dealing with that. And it brought back a lot of memories from something I've spoke about a few times since this camping ban proposal has come forward. And that is what happened during the pandemic when ServiceNet in the city of Pittsfield got permission from the Diocese of Springfield to use the former St. Joseph's High School on Maplewood as an emergency COVID shelter. And they abruptly closed it in, I want to say June or July. It was July, early July, I think, of 2020, in the height of the pandemic. All the belongings that people owned in there were thrown into the trash. They were thrown into a dumpster. They were picked up by the city workers and hauled away and brought to City Yard. I, with another individual who was an advocate in our community for people in homelessness, we went there. And I met with the commissioner, Ricardo Morales, and some other workers there. And they dumped the contents of the truck, the dumpster, and let us go through it because we were trying to find important stuff that people lost. And we found some of it. I found wallets, IDs, VA papers, all sorts of stuff. A backpack that had an iPad and a phone and their charger in it. One individual was looking for his ID and he had a court case coming up for something and his paperwork for that was in there and he was afraid that he was going to get messed up on that and end up getting a warrant out because he couldn't find and didn't have all the stuff he needed. It was an absolute mess. Because of that, it triggered this response where people were looking for a place to go. They didn't have the shelter open now. And the city and ServiceNet was saying the Diocese of Springfield told us we have to be out by August 1st, which was not true because as we know that the shelter eventually reopened, and stayed open until the one on Finn Street opened. So for a few years after that. But anyway, when Springside Park started flooding with people, as many of you that have been following me for a while know, I covered that and stayed on that pretty much where that's all It's Pittsfield Tonight was doing at that time. That's all I was doing. And I had Channel 10, Channel 13, Channel 22, all these news channels contacting me, which at the time I thought was great because it's going to bring the attention needed to this. And I put out a post that these people were desperate for food, clothing, tents, things like that. The pavilion at Springside Park became the drop-off point, and it filled up. It was unbelievable how the community stepped up. I mean, the pavilion was every day. People were bringing fresh vegetables, fresh fruits, water, soda, meals, hot meals, snacks, clothing, tents. I mean, it was unbelievable how much stuff was coming in there. Toiletries, first aid kits. But my point was, when I pushed that story as hard as I did, the point was not to just have donations so people could live in the park. It was to pressure the city into reopening the shelter, which it took a long time before that happened. What the city ended up doing is bringing in porta potties, which was insanity to me. That was not what I was trying to do. I wasn't saying let's make Springside Park the official encampment. Now, because of all the donations and everything coming into there, well, where do you think all the people that were on the streets were going? Word was out that you can go there and you can get meals, you can get the things you need, because during the pandemic, it wasn't so easy to get all that stuff. That was before any vaccines were even talked about, and people were confused as to what it even was. So it was a mess. The Pittsfield Police Department was overwhelmed with being called there constantly. One of the advocates that I was working with, she called me one night around midnight. I can't find him. She was in an absolute panic. And I said, calm down, you can't find who? There was a group of about 8 to 10 people in homelessness that we became very close with and were working with a lot. They were the ones that, this one guy, I mean, he couldn't hug me enough, and I didn't even care about COVID at that time. When I found his wallet and his ID and everything he needed, he was beyond happy. And I was so mad that happened to them. I'm beyond mad. Mad doesn't describe how I felt. It was furious. I couldn't understand treating human beings like that. But But anyways, my point where I'm going with this is the PPD was overwhelmed. There was fighting in there. That night she called me that she couldn't find them. She was in a complete panic. I meet her down there at midnight. She thought something happened to him. She thought, because again, when you cover a situation like that, for some reason, there is a small segment of people that want to go after the ones in homelessness and attack them. And she was concerned that something literally happened to them. We ended up finding them. They were just partying out in the woods. And they were drunk. And a big situation happened with this couple. The one that were, I think they might have been married or engaged. I don't know the story, but they got in a big fight, basically due to the stresses and pressures of living like that. And they were drinking, and he body slammed her in a fire pit. And it was just awful. Everything was awful that was happening. I saw people die in there. One person that I had gotten very close with, trying to help him, he was begging for help, and he committed suicide in there. And that one tore me to pieces. I hated to see what I was seeing. Eventually, it came to an end. Eventually, it took a long time before ServiceNet reopened that shelter. My point with all of this is what Grants Pass did by not having sheltering in place is exactly what happened at Springside Park. When you take people who, many of them have addiction issues, mental health issues, then there's a segment of that population that just ran out of money, that they couldn't pay for rent anymore. Maybe they have a disability. Maybe they got injured and bills backed up and they couldn't pay for rent. So you had a variety of people coming from different angles, all pushed together in one area, fighting for porta potties. They were stealing from each other. It got horrible in there. It was chaotic. There was no management. There was nothing. It was insanity that we let that happen. That is exactly what is happening in these encampments in Grants Pass. And to me, that is proof that if you implement bans like this, you're going to have a horrible side effect if there is not adequate sheltering and programs in place. Now, the other side to this coin is when this camping ban ordinance that the mayor has put forward started picking up a lot of traction. And business owners on North Street who have many concerns, started voicing, something has to be done. It's crazy. It's chaotic up here. And it is. North Street is very confusing what's happening there. But the businesses started being attacked. Windows started being smashed out. Employees of stores were starting to be threatened. It's caused unbelievable chaos. And then I've heard stories on the other side of it where people in homelessness have been attacked. I don't know if they've physically been attacked, but they've had belongings stolen from them. It's bad. That side of it is bad. Doesn't describe that either. It's unacceptable. I fear that could happen. Now, I've said this all along, and I'm going to preach on this till I guess I'm blue in the face if that actually happens. What is happening on North Street? I don't think a camping ban ordinance is going to solve that. Foot patrol. I've been saying this. Police officers. We need a police foot patrol on North Street. If they're on bicycles, whatever. But we need officers on that strip. Now, when people talk about defund the police and their budget is overinflated, I don't want to get into that conversation because I've always been a big supporter of police. It's admirable when somebody will do that job. Now, is every police officer perfect? No. Anything that involves humans, you're going to have some issues. They're people. Overall, I think we've got a really good department. Overall, I applaud people who are willing to get into that line of work and do that. They're needed in society. You have to have police. But the answer would be, if there's police officers walking North Street all day, yes, I don't care who you are. Should you get a ticket or get fined or get in trouble well, I guess since everyone feels free to just curse constantly now, but should you get in trouble for shitting in somebody's doorway? Yes. Should you get in trouble for drinking out in public and getting in fights on the sidewalk? Yes. When a drunk person comes up to you and you're not sure how to feel about that and they're asking for money and they might be intoxicated and a little aggressive, that behavior can't happen. The bicycles all going up and down the sidewalk, that should not be happening. It's dangerous. It's incredibly dangerous with e-bikes. I've talked about that before. What is happening on North Street is specific because when you hear businesses being called names and attacked or whatever over this camping ban ordinance, it's not all businesses. It seems to be specific to North Street. North Street is the problem. The answer is foot patrol. Foot patrol. I don't know how else to say that. A camping ban ordinance, I would support it 100% if all the sheltering and programs were in place. So if an officer was to approach somebody camping and say, hey, my name's Officer so-and-so, you can't be camping here. This is against the law. I'm going to give you one warning. But let me tell you, we have help for you. What is it that you need? I can bring you to a shelter right now. Do you need an available bed? Are you looking to get into treatment? What is it that you need? But they don't have those tools to do that because the shelter at Finn Street, I think, accommodates like 40 to 45 people. And they went from St. Joe's where they had over 80. So you immediately lost all those beds. There are housing projects coming online that is exciting. West Housatonic Street, that's going to be a good one. That's 28 permanent and supportive housing units. First Street, that's coming online. There's other ones coming online. But there's a huge problem here with what's happening with rents and home ownership in the community. And that's going to be another conversation, obviously. And I keep saying that, but I am going to do a video dedicated to that. But last night, if you hadn't seen the meeting, and I'll end it with this, it passed ordinance and rules. It is going to the committee, or from the Ordinance and Rules Committee to the City Council, and they will vote on it. Whether it passes or it goes back to Ordinance and Rules or it goes back to the mayor, I don't know. I don't know what the next step is, whether they table it or they pass it. But I'm against it until there is adequate facilities in place. I mean, that makes common sense to me. Or you're playing with fire. You're messing with people's lives, and you're going to have a huge problem. It's going to continue to disrupt the community, and it's going to get worse. The answer in the short term right now, and it shouldn't be a short term solution though, is foot patrol on North Street. North Street is so confusing to me. I don't even understand what's going on there anymore. Who designed that? And I'll finish with this because I was thankful that one of the counselors spoke up about our business director, or whatever his title is, our red carpet team. Who designed this layout? Does anybody know what is happening on North Street? Walk North Street and take a good look. And look at what's there. And I can go to Rare and buy an unbelievably delicious meal. Very expensive, high end. I would call that a 4 or 5 star dining. I mean, the food there is amazing. It's pricey, but it is amazing. And then right next to it is ServiceNet. Nothing is making sense to the layout of how North Street is. I don't understand any of it. Everything's just a hodgepodge of like, did you just rent to anybody who wanted it? It doesn't make sense to me. But again, we'll continue that maybe in another video tomorrow or the day after on some of the other things about it. But if you haven't seen that meeting, it is worth the watch. And that's basically how I feel about it. I am pro-business, pro-police, pro-people, pro-helping those in need, the most vulnerable in the community, the people who need the help. Yeah, I'm pro all of that. But I don't feel like the pieces to the puzzle are there yet. And putting this through without those right pieces to the puzzle there could make things that much worse. It really could. And that can't happen. This has to be thought out. The answer right now that could curb a lot of the problems and help diffuse things is put a foot patrol on North Street. I can't tell you what that would probably do for the business owners. They'd probably stand up and cheer and clap. And I get it. I pushed and pushed and pushed for that in other videos, as you know. And last week or whatever we saw, or week before, we saw a patrol officer in the mornings on a bicycle on North Street. And that's a great start. But I think we need 2 officers walking the beat like it was. And Karen Kalinowski, who's running for at-large this year, and she's a former police officer, said the exact same thing last night. And I talk to Karen quite often in political seasons. So now that she's running again, I do talk to her quite often. And I agree with her on that, 100%. I've been preaching that over and over and over. That's common sense. Common sense. And if they're saying we don't have the manpower, we don't have this, we don't have that, find it, make it work. The mayor, make it work. There's the answer. All right. So look, be kind to each other. Stop with the bashing and the fighting. I get that this is serious and it's people's lives, but this has to be civilly done or it's just going to get worse. People need to come to the table and talk. That's what they need to do. And this needs to be figured out the right way. The right way. There's too much on the line. All right, so that is it for now. Take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and I'll catch you all in the next day or two.